Hello. You might notice, if you're a frequent listener, that this episode is not titled Fallout New Vegas Part 2, and that is because due to some scheduling difficulties, we had to move that to a couple of weeks from now. So this week's episode, even though Jono says it's 463, is episode 462 about Deus Ex. I apologize for the scheduling issues, and I hope you enjoy.
Hello everyone, welcome to episode 463 of Retro Encounter, RPG fans' bi-weekly podcast of many topics. I am your host today, Jono Logan. I'm filling in for Zach, and I'm here today to chat about a classic series of RPGs that is about to have its big 25th anniversary on June 23rd, 2025. And that series is Deus Ex. Yes, Deus Ex. It is a world where technology and the power of corporations have run amok with extreme social and economic inequality, racism, and terrorism fueling tremendous societal upheaval. And every single summary of a science fiction game now sounds just like a description of our current reality, which is kind of disturbing when you really think about it. But the devil in the machine in this game isn't actually AI, not unless you count the mainstream media as our current antagonist, but it is actually transhumanism. This is a world where a large number of people are scared and hate transhumans. Again, Nostradamus has nothing on game devs from the 2000s to the 2010s. But in this world, cybernetic augmentation had become commonplace, allowing the rich and powerful to rise above those who are unaugmented. And of course, it gets a little bit more complicated than that. And we're going to be talking about all 4 games, technically 5, but we're not going to talk about that one because it's not even the dark sheep of the family. So we're going to talk about the 4 main games in this series in greater detail. But first, please let me introduce our panel. First up is Tom.
Hello.
And Pete.
Hello.
And Patrick.
Hi, everyone.
And Matt.
Howdy.
So before I ask each of you your background with the Deus Ex series, I just want to give our listeners a little bit of background about it. If you're listening to this, chances are you've played at least one of these games, but here's a little bit of background. So the title of the series comes from the phrase Deus Ex Machina, which is Latin for God from the Machine. And this is referring to a plot device in which a seemingly insolvable problem is suddenly and abruptly resolved by the inexplicable intervention of a new event, character, ability, or object. It literally, basically, God comes down and solves the problem for you. And this was a common climax in many plays from especially the Greek era. And in recent years, this concept is it's considered it's hacky. Any writer who does God from the Machine hasn't properly set up their plot and their resolution and stuff, despite the fact that some very good writers use it. For example, pretty much every single series finale ever written for Doctor Who in the last couple of years features literally God from the Machine. Anyway, the funny thing is this doesn't really have anything to do with these games because God from the Machine doesn't really happen in these games. They were originally developed by Warren Spector, the incredibly famous, for very good reason, video game designer and director. He is one of the pioneers of the immersive sim genre. He worked on titles like Ultima Underworld and System Shock, of course. So what happened here is he joined a developer called Ion Storm in 1997, and they gave him what can only be described as a shocking level of creative freedom and funds to develop Deus Ex, the game of his dreams, essentially. Originally, it was called Troubleshooter, which is actually a really, really good name for the game. Actually, it might even be a better game than Deus Ex, because Deus Ex gave players, especially at the time, a shocking amount of freedom to solve problems however they want. They could treat it as an FPS. They could, go shooting in. They could also use stealth. They could hack in. They could use diplomacy or dialogue. Basically, you troubleshooted the game however you wanted. Essentially, the idea was there were problems, not puzzles. And you could go in however you felt like and play. Now, this offered a tremendous amount of replay value, obviously, to the series, because you could play it one way and then play it another and then play it another. The game was set in a dystopian future setting, so 50 years in the future, thereabouts, 52 years. It was set in 2052. And it was very heavily influenced by conspiracy theories. Basically, the concept of the series is every conspiracy theory of the 20th century is probably true. It was a massive success. Huge commercial and critical success. It sold over 1 million copies. It won multiple Game of the Year awards, and it is still beloved to this day. And I would say most importantly that its immersive sim style influenced countless games after it. In many ways, it is just as influential as Half-Life was in 97. Half-Life revolutionized the FPS, whereas this created the idea that you can solve things as you want. And games today, even the Dishonored series, for example, Prey, like these games offer that same level of however you want to solve the problem, you can solve the problem. Super, super complex to do. And then, of course, it was a massive success. So they were like, hey, we want to make a sequel. So they did. They created Invisible War in 2003. However, it was faced with some mixed criticism because it simplified gameplay mechanics, unified ammunition types, I believe. We're going to talk about that in a bit. And also, it was console first. It wasn't on the PC, which tremendously limited the amount of, I guess, immersive simness of it. It was technically, again, there are some other things that came out, but the next big game that came out was years later in 2011 when Deus Ex Human Revolution came out. Now, this was an interesting one because it was actually a prequel. It went back in time to the earlier days of the Deus Ex universe, and we got to see how the society developed into what we eventually found in the first game. This was a pretty big success. There were a few issues with it in terms of gameplay. Boss battles kind of sucked in the original version anyway. And then there was another sequel in 2016, Deus Ex Mankind Divided. This was extremely well received, great immersive sim, wonderful graphics, great gameplay, some really, really good side quests. It didn't really change that much, but then something happened, or more accurately, nothing happened, in the sense that the planned sequel was reportedly canceled in early 2024 by the Embracer Group. Everyone's the real antagonists of everything. And that led to layoffs, and unfortunately, it just kind of vanished since then. And we haven't actually heard anything about the game since then, but honestly, I think that this game still has life in it. I really do. I'd like to ask each of your experience with this series thus far, and tell me just how it impressed you, I guess you could say. Let's go in the order that we're going to be going in reviews. Oh, by the way, everyone, there are going to be 4 reviews coming out, retro reviews of each one of these games. I think they might be out now, but they'll be on the site in a few days if not. So let's start with you, Tom.
Yeah, so I actually came across Deus Ex Human Revolution first. I sort of played around with it on the 360 initially, didn't really get further than the first couple missions maybe, but then when the director's cut came out for the Wii U, I went all in on it, and I completely fell in love with it. Then, years later, I went on to Mankind Divided, and since then, I tried to play the first game, but it just never, which, I'll go into in my review and this, but it just never really clicked. For whatever reason, just of the way it's designed, it can be really overwhelming to new players, so that was really intimidating. But yeah, I am grateful I gave it a proper second look this time, because this isn't news to anyone who's played these games, but it is easily the best in the series.
It's a classic for a reason.
Yeah, and I loved Human Revolution and, Mankind Divided to an extent. Obvious glaring issues with that game, but that may not necessarily have been Eidos's fault. It's just such a cool series, just that I would say it is sci-fi, but it feels more like political thriller. Obviously there are sci-fi elements in it, but you get more out of the political thriller stuff, especially in the first game, than you do anything else in that game. That's what stands out the most, and what has stood the test of time with that game in particular. And yeah, it's just a great series, and it's just such a shame about what you were saying with the Embracer Group stuff, that we might not be seeing it again for another decade or two.
A corporation that may have too much power. Or I guess not a corporation, a investment group. Pete, how about you? What is your background with the series?
I played the first one years after it came out. I remember watching various demo disc videos that would have games on them I wonder if it was one of those like Yahoo.com discs they used to distribute back in the old .com days.
I know what you're talking
Had
about.
to have been I know. I had to have been a later one than that. That's actually, it doesn't seem right. But
maybe you got it. Maybe you got it in one of those pack-ins from PC Gamer or something when they used to give CDs away with it.
If only. I never subscribed to computer magazines or video game magazines very much. But now that I think about it, it must have been on some other game. You know, the games used to ship on CDs with like little videos pressed to them. If you could open the install disc and it would kick you to a menu and the install splash screen, and sometimes it'd be like coming next, and it had to have been there that I first saw it, and it looks so cool.
It's very funny how in the earlier days of video games, in multimedia video games especially, that they were really pulling from things that they already knew, which in this case was the movie theater. And they were like, oh, everyone loves a trailer, coming attractions.
For sure. I mean, that's where video game trailers started, you know? Like, I heard about Interstate 76 because I played Mech Warrior 2 and the thing was on there. So, you know, but that stuff was everywhere. And I saw Deus Ex there. I played it. It had to have been years after the fact, perhaps like 2004 or 5 or so. And I had always played old games. That was always kind of the thing that I would do. I would fish around on abandonware sites and everything. I think I played this, it was the Game of the Year edition later down the line. And it's just amazing. I loved all these types of games. I was a huge Thief fan, so of course I played Stealthy when I played Deus Ex, and the fact that the game could accommodate all these different play styles was so cool. This time, later on, I played Human Revolution when it came out, and I spent full price on it at a time in my life when I never spent full price on games, and I loved that game. I also recently just played that maybe 2 years ago on my Steam Deck. I played through it all again, and it's still incredible. I think Human Revolution is tremendous, and I was much more violent that second time through, and I was surprised at how much fun it still was.
You know, most people mellow out in their old age, whereas you were like, I'm going stealthy when you were a kid, but now you're like, what the hell?
Do you know what happens with your old age? What happens with your old age is that you begin to have less time.
I don't have the patience for this shit anymore.
yeah, you have a little bit of you start to seek a straighter line through some of these things sometimes. It was a mix, I'll say. When I played Human Revolution this last time, it was a bit of a mix, and I thought it was very satisfying. It was a neat way to kind of see everything the game had to offer. I haven't finished my playthrough of Mankind Divided, but I started that immediately after I finished Human Revolution, and so far I think that's tremendous as well. And then, of course, after all that, I played Invisible War.
I'm really excited to talk about Invisible War.
You know, then I played Invisible War, and I played it. Played it.
You played it, and we're going to talk about it. Patrick, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background with the series?
Yeah, so I missed out on the Deus Ex train at time of initial release, mostly because I've never had a decent PC most of my life. That changed around 2013 or 2014. And when that happened, that I got a decent PC with a good GPU and all of that, I purchased Human Revolution Director's Cut. But I also have this really irritating tendency that I cannot play a game out of order, even though chronologically it would have been in order to start with Human Revolution in terms of the in-game chronology. So at the time I went back and played Deus Ex, which I loved, and I also for the first time, I think that was the first game where I ever it's the first PC game where I ever toyed with mods and stuff and fan made missions and everything, which that was super cool and fun. I'd never done anything like that with any game ever. So sort of the freedom and open worldness of the immersive sim is something I really dug. Then I played Invisible War, which my biggest memory there was I'm pretty sure it took me longer to get the game to run properly than it took for me to actually beat the game.
That makes sense.
There was something wrong. I think they've done a lot of work in the interim, but like every time I'd boot it up, it would crash. If an FMV sequence happened, it would just cut out. It was maddening. I had to go through all these forums to figure out what was wrong.
I'll say this: someone has done some work since then.
Yeah, no, I booted it up again recently, and no problems. But whatever
I'm
digital
saying
release,
I did have problems, but I think the fans have gotten to it and helped it along as well, which I didn't experience, but Jono told me about. But yeah, I had some issues also still.
Honestly, nowadays, if you play a game that's like pre-2010, chances are that the reason you're playing it is a tremendous amount of free labor from the internet.
That's exactly the case, and I'm glad it's gotten more visibility on it now than it had a decade ago when people were still just trying to figure out how to run it. And then after that, I played Human Revolution Director's Cut. I played it multiple times. I'll talk about this in further detail, but at the time I got every achievement. I was that sort of enthralled by it, really enjoyed it. And then I bought Mankind Divided at time of release, but I only got around to playing it like 2 weeks ago. Like I finished writing my review of Human Revolution, and I was like, I haven't played Mankind Divided yet. So I played through it, was loving it as I was playing it, and then got to the ending, and well, we'll get into it.
Was loving it, and then it ended, and you're like, huh. Don't worry, there's no spoiler because there's literally no ending.
The only spoiler is you're not getting one, buddy. You're not getting one.
Oh, I love that.
Matt, why don't you take this one? Tell us a little bit about your history with the series, and we'll talk. And we'll be talking about the quote unquote ending of this game a little bit later.
Sure. I think I probably have the least amount of experience with this series compared to all of you guys. I was never a PC gamer just because, my friends who were always had problems. They're like, check this out. And then it's like crash. But I do recall seeing...
it's a way of life.
Master Race, right? I don't like playing my games. I like troubleshooting my games. So yeah, Troubleshooter, that's a great title for the series. But
yeah, it's actually become more relevant the more years have passed, really.
Honestly, yeah, I do like that title. But I do remember seeing like the PS2 box art like at EB Games all the time, and just thinking like, who is this like Albert Wesker looking guy, like JC Denton on the cover? And then like I never had an Xbox, so like I would see Invisible War again on the shelf, and I'm like, what is? I had no connection between those two games, and I do think the series has kind of a advertising problem, which might have led to like their downfall to some degree. But like I think that the box art of Human Revolution and Mankind Divided are way too similar. Even now, I'm like, which one is which? But I never played any of them until Human Revolution, and I kind of toyed around with it at the beginning. I played through probably half of it, but I was enjoying it, but not really floored in any way. So I never gave the series like a proper crack until the anniversary was coming up, and I thought, okay, like I love sci-fi. And, being older now, I think I would appreciate the political thriller aspect more. And I really loved Mankind Divided. Like it's making me excited for the upcoming re-release of the PS2 classic on PS Plus, like in a few days. But I'm very interested in going back and playing the series, like, what I can of it. And also, I think we'll get into it, but I'm also very intrigued by how goofy, correct me if I'm wrong, like the first two games seem. Like the conspiracy theory aspect seems like very hammy in a way. I don't know, compared to like the Adam Jensen games. Like the original one deals with like Area 51 and like all kinds of crazy stuff. Like it reminds me of just reading about it. I mean, the Illuminatus trilogy of books, right? I don't know if anyone knows that, but yeah, I'm very intrigued to learn more. So I'm coming here as like a pupil more than as a teacher.
You're spot on with that goofy read. It is. It comes from a time when conspiracy theories were much more fun. That's what you often hear about the first Deus Ex. And you were talking about, well, what could they possibly do? And the answer is obvious. QAnon Deus Ex. Duh.
I guess the problem is nowadays it's literally like conspiracy theories. Just look around.
Right. No, the harsh reality is that the stuff that's actually happening is worse than most of the conspiracy theories say they are.
What would be really revolutionary is if they did one where nothing happens. It's just completely normal.
Level 3 pizza shop.
Yeah.
Oh God.
Or the whole game is you trying to talk down your friends on Facebook in cyberspace, being like, "No, it's not true. People are lying. Listen, here's why."
like a Thanksgiving dinner persuasion check. Like Dad.
Oh, that would be a horrible, horrible game. RPG.
What a terrible game.
You just sit at Thanksgiving and it's just like a series of checks that you can never pass. Well, yeah, my experience with the game is actually mostly focused on the last two. This is a little bit embarrassing, actually. When I was in university, 2005, 2006, my best friend was like, I have some games that I want you to play. And I was a massive games fan even then, but I was more of a console gamer, and I was also super, super busy with school. And he gave me a copy of Deus Ex, Game of the Year edition, and he also gave me a copy of Ultimate Spider-Man. And I was like, I have to choose between one of these two games. And I played Ultimate Spider-Man. I have no regrets about that, because Ultimate Spider-Man is a real good Spider-Man game.
Great game.
But then Deus Ex just kind of sat on my shelf. And eventually I gave it back to him, or I was a bad friend and I lost the disc. I'm not entirely certain. I really hope I gave it back to him, because I hate when people do that to me. And I just kind of forgot about it. And then I started getting back into PC gaming after I graduated, and a few years after that. And I heard a lot about the Deus Ex series, so I downloaded Human Revolution, and I really, really enjoyed it. I loved it. I loved the look of it. I loved the style. It was immersive sim. I liked even at that stage, I played it years later, so by that point in time, open world games have become a little bit more open with less gates. But I enjoyed like the little walled gardens that this game had, and the mission-based RPG mechanics. I really, really liked it. And then I played Mankind Divided right after that, and ignoring the ending, I adore Mankind Divided. I think it's just wonderful. I think it's an awesome example of what games could do in that period of time. The game is gorgeous to this day, looks beautiful, incredible design, really, really good level design, especially in these, again, like little walled garden open world settings where there's so much happening. There's so much character in this world in Prague. I just adored it. So that's my background with the series. But I kind of want to go through game by game, because like I said, we have 4 retro reviews that are coming out, written by these fine folks. And I wanted to go through just game by game, getting everyone's thoughts on it. But we'll start with the very first one. So Deus Ex. Again, Tom, we chatted a little bit about the background of the series in general, but can you give us a brief idea of the plot of the original game?
Yeah, so J.C. Denton is
that's a 90s hero name right there.
Yeah.
J.D. Denton. How are we going to make our edgy hero even more edgy? He has initials instead of a first name.
Well, you name him after Jesus Christ, obviously.
Oh, yeah, it was JC was for Jesus Christ, yeah.
War Inspector is a genius, but he is not subtle at times.
Deus Ex is many things. Subtle, it's not.
No, it's not.
No. Oh my God, no.
I'll get into naming convention when we get to Human Revolution, because I have a lot to say about it.
Okay, so Jesus Christ is in the future.
Yeah. So Jesus Christ Denton is he's a newly minted officer agent for UNATCO, which is like the United Nations anti-terrorism coalition. And him and his brother Paul are the world's first nano-augmented humans. Augmentation exist in this universe, but they're all like mechanical and like metallic and, very clear and obvious. But nano augmentations are like the next level of that, where, people are like more than meets the eye, like barely even notice anything from a glance. And yet they have these incredible abilities, like, they can turn invisible, they have superhuman strength. So, JC and Paul are kind of treated with animosity initially because, it's this new thing that, they themselves don't even know what they're capable of yet. So, it's all whole new territory for everyone. And they get sent on JC gets sent on his first assignment to thwart quote unquote terrorists from the National Secessionist Forces that have invaded Liberty Island in New York.
Blowing the head off the Statue of Liberty, too.
Yeah, blowing the head off the Statue of Liberty. And I mean, I was originally going to say it's tricky to know where to begin with Deus Ex, and that's part of my big issue with it, is that opening mission is like, I mean, talk about throwing you in the deep end. Like that mission is why myself and so many other people sort of were put off from playing the original for so long, because it really just drops you in there and says, all right, now go, you know. It kind of gives you some vague objectives of what you're supposed to be doing. And it's interesting because the later levels that follow it up are a lot more focused than that first level. So it's just, it feels really weird that I guess you could argue they put their best foot forward, but I wouldn't really say that's a benefit to new players, because true, you know, get taken through training and you're given a fairly decent rundown of the game's mechanics, systems, and how to like exploit them and manipulate them for your own gain. But then you're just thrown in there and said, all right, now you figure the rest out. And you do, and you can. And, you know, once you force yourself through it, you do start to pick up on things like, oh, okay, this does this and this does this. But yeah, it's very, you know, late 90s, early 2000s game design of like, you know, you figure it out. You know, tutorial schmutorial, you know, you can do the heavy lifting, whatever.
Yeah.
It's, you know, which is bold, certainly. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say it's a good thing, but taking the game as a whole, it is ultimately to its benefit, because you quickly pick up on, you know, the game systems and the ways that you can exploit it through, you know, things like ATM machines that you can just hack into and, you know, steal people's money, which is interesting because they don't really go into the morality of that at any point. That's just something that you can do, you know, apropos of nothing, which I suppose speaks to the game's, like, you know, why it's still one of, if not the absolute best immersive sims, that there's, you know, it truly is a playground.
Let's actually talk about the immersive sim aspect of this, because like I said in the introduction, this is a game that is very much driven by its systems, which allow for experimentation more than anything. For example, one of the things you mentioned in your review is that if you kind of, let's put it this way, it may have been confusing for a lot of FPS players at the time because they are used to getting their big gun and running into a room and killing everyone. Whereas in this game, it requires a very different approach because the gunplay, for example, is much more deliberate and calculating and strategic.
Terrible, you might say, at least at first.
Terrible. Yeah, okay, terrible. Let's go with that. But it's very different from FPS games up to this point. This is not Half-Life.
Yeah, no, it's terrible if you try and play it like a shooter, which isn't, you know, the player's fault for assuming it's going to play like that, because of course, you know, Quake.
It's in Unreal Engine, one of the best to do it.
Yeah,
it's in Unreal Engine. Unreal by that point it was still, you know, recent history. And also like Half-Life and Quake had already been out. So,
and didn't they add like a deathmatch mode to this game after the fact? I think.
Oh, it was the early 2000s. There was a deathmatch mode in everything.
Oh yeah,
thankfully there was a deathmatch mode and everything. But the thing about it is, you could make the gunplay never cool, never like Unreal Tournament level. But with what I remember about the deathmatch mode is that you basically kit out your character with all the augmentations and stuff too. So you can get like accurate shooting if you want, and also stealth, various other things. So it was pretty interesting. It was, the deathmatch aspect wasn't terrible, despite the fact that the shooting was pretty terrible.
Yeah, I mean, death matches were pretty much. We're lucky that like Silent Hill didn't have a deathmatch for mode in this, just because that was kind of how you made money after this. You were like, deathmatch mode. The internet just became a thing. You got to get the players online. Or LAN parties too.
Oh yeah, about the immersive sim thing. Like honestly, I had never heard that term until like a few months ago. Like researching this game. Yeah, seriously. And like I've played all those games, I feel like. And are we considering, like, would you guys consider, for example, BioShock to be an immersive sim just because there's more focus on storytelling? Okay,
I'd say it's very light. I could abide that, but it would be like a light version. The old joke is that, is your game an immersive sim? Yes or no? Depends on, can you stack boxes and get to places you're not supposed to. That's reductive, obviously, but it points to a spiritual truth about immersive sim that, you know, I would say BioShock has environmental interactions. You can like light oil on fire or electrocute water in BioShock, and you can hack stuff. So I'd be comfortable calling something like BioShock a light immersive sim. I have no issue with that.
War Inspector very much was the pioneer of this, and you can see the System Shock, for example, and System Shock 2 were they are technically immersive sims, and he worked on System Shock, but this was generally considered to be the first like fully kitted out immersive sim, and you can see elements of the immersive sim going off in different directions, because obviously System Shock BioShock was a spiritual successor to that, and it didn't have quite the same level of immersive sim, but it did have some of it. I would argue
System Shock 2, I would call System Shock 2 more or less on par with something like this.
Yeah,
there's some physics interactions, and you can like move boxes around. But yeah, I mean, this is it's a funny rabbit hole to go. If you can look, if you wanted to, you could find places on the internet where people debate this all the time. When I was first playing,
if you want to, you can find places on the internet where people debate anything all the time.
True. When I first encountered these games, immersive sim, I remember being something I first heard in like 2017 too. For me, this was a FPS/RPG, and you could be stealthy. And when I played a lot of Thief and Thief 2, and in Thief, you were just stealthy, and the interactions that can happen in Thief are, can the guards see me? Can they hear me? Can I pick their pocket? Do they have something that I can steal from? But then Deus Ex was like, okay, this came a little bit later, and it's like Thief, except there's a bunch more stuff in it, and you got stats, so it's like an RPG. But yeah, the immersive sim was a term that I encountered much later also, and I don't mind it, but I also rarely kind of use it, just because it wasn't in the milieu when I was encountering this stuff.
In terms of today, the immersive sim is, I would argue there are elements of immersive sim in literally every single game nowadays, just because it's so great for immersion of the world. But games where you are given complete freedom, arguably Arcane Studios picked up the baton, and their games like Dishonored 2, Death of the Outsider, Deathloop, and Prey are the successors of this level of freedom where you can approach the game as you want. Thief, as you mentioned, is another one. And there are a few other games out there that kind of hold on to the immersive sim stylings. I think Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines has elements of that. Arguably, in a very different gameplay style, Hitman, the modern day Hitman games kind of have that too, where you can approach the world exactly as you want. It's reactive. It changes based on your actions. The latest Indiana Jones game, Great Circle, had a ton of elements of immersive sims, because again, it had very similar to this. It had very small open worlds where characters existed and followed routines and were living a life, and you were put in there and you could disrupt those routines. So it's a pretty wide field of genre. But pure immersive sims, yeah, Deus Ex is probably the platonic ideal, so to speak. But one of the things that we were talking about a few minutes ago was Deus Ex and Invisible War, which we'll be talking about in a few minutes, and how I don't want to use the word difficult it is to play today, but it does have some barriers of entry, because the reality is, as I said, it's coming up to the 25th anniversary in just a couple of days. It's an older game. It's from 2000, and no matter how well designed a game is from that long ago, there are going to be a lot of points of friction to players today, especially for 3D games. Weirdly, a lot of if anyone can pretty much pick up a SNES game nowadays, and they're probably not going to feel a lot of friction, because by that point in time, a lot of the problems with 2D side scrollers, 2D RPGs, 2D games had been figured out. But by 2000, we were still puzzling out, okay, how does this 3D game world work? How do open worlds work? So there are going to be a lot of points of friction. And in response to that, there are actually some other ways to play Deus Ex that can smooth out some of those problems for players today. You actually utilized one of them, which I believe was the Deus Ex community update.
Yeah, so that's more on the technical side of things, because I wanted to have as close to a vanilla experience as I could, since I'd never played it before, of course. And also for the purposes of this review, for the sake of fairness. That does some basic things, like makes the game widescreen, so it's compatible with a 4K monitor, for instance, and it allows you to change the FOV. It even allows you to. There's a mod called Lady Denton, because originally the Warren Spector wanted J.C. Denton to you could either choose for them to be male or female, and they due to time constraints they couldn't make a female J.C. Denton, but
God, so woke. 2000 was so woke. God.
Yeah, I can't believe they put politics in this completely politics-free game. And, well, as you were saying before, fans sort of put in their hard labor for them on that end. And, there's now a mod that exists that tries to replicate what it would have been like had it had been in the game from the start. And it's shockingly good and shockingly close to, I'll have to look up what her name is, but
they just pitch up the voice, or do they get someone else to act out the voice?
No, so that's the best part, is that they hired a voice actress, and from what I've heard, she emulates that, JC Denton deadpan, dry wit, sort of cattiness perfectly.
It would have been so easy for them just to dump that into a voice modulator AI and just train it to make it a female voice, but with the identical vocal inflections from the original game. So I'm really glad that they hired someone who could actually give an interpretation of the character.
Yeah, and, you can... And I'm glad that that's part of the community update, because the community update is a compilation of several mods that do quality of life things. And I'm glad that counts as part of it, because, it was originally intended to be a part of the game. They just couldn't for, due to time constraints and budget. But yeah, the script, it's the same, but they just hired this wonderful voice actress to redouble the lines, and it sounds fantastic. So if that sounds like a way you'd prefer to play it, you can absolutely play it that way and have the exact same experience from the sounds of it, which is incredible.
Do the guards say, "There she is"?
Yes, they do, actually.
No way. That's great.
And I want to say that this mod actually predates a lot of the modern AI voice mod stuff that's going on, which I'm not a fan of. But that's a whole other discussion.
It's a discussion I've actually been thinking about having on Random Encounter at some point in the near future. That's just a tease to anyone listening to this. That's something that we're probably going to be having an episode on before the end of the year.
It's also a topic of the game,
Yeah, that's true. But yeah, apparently they do throw in a few pronouns, into the dialogue. Yeah, and I'm assuming they got a sound-alike just to say those specific words and not... Yeah, it's crazy amount of effort.
Well, that's what fans do, right?
Yeah.
Especially for games that they love. Like I said, the internet is built on free labor.
Yeah, and there's also...
Technically so is AI, but that's a whole other thing.
that's the sort of the opposite end of the morality spectrum in that regard.
Do you have any notion of when this mod came out?
It says 2009 from Wikipedia, so pretty early.
I think these mods continuously get updated over time, though. So that would have been probably the first version, but the latest version would have come out a few years later.
The Lady Denton Project, 2021.
Lady Denton Project. That's Lady Denton being the femshep of the immersive cool. sim world. That's only one, though. There are actually some others, including one that got released a couple of days ago, presumably in honor of the 25th anniversary, which was, for years now, GMDX. Has been one of these, I guess, two of the biggest Deus Ex mods that quote unquote modernize the game. And this one, unlike Augmented Edition, which tries to remain much more true to the original, this one did a lot more to alter gameplay, balance, look, that kind of thing. And a brand new version of it, GMDX Augmented Edition. GMDX means Give Me Deus Ex. Augmented Edition came out. And in this particular case, it is about as close to an official remaster as you can get. It's an unofficial remaster, but it does, all of the textures are completely redone, high definition textures for every asset and model of the game. You can really customize the environment. You can customize the difficulty, how item boxes work. There are now additional interactions with key NPCs. The hacking system's been completely reworked. So fans of the series have taken it and they have modernized it into a way that is kind of a remaster, almost in some ways a remake.
There's also Deus Ex Revision, which is another very similar one to Give Me Deus Ex mod. I would say I would recommend against, if you've never played the first Deus Ex, I would recommend against installing those two specific mods at first. I mean, by all means you can, but they change like some fundamental gameplay stuff as well as visual stuff. So I'd recommend playing it as close as you can to the original experience that you can handle in today's day and age.
Yes, but if you have played the game many times and you are looking for a new experience, this is just solid gold.
Absolutely, yeah.
Can I ask, like, the people that have played it at least, how does it balance, like, does it do a good job of balancing all the various sci-fi and like conspiracy elements that it, because it seems to cover like aliens, AI, transhumanism, and like the Knights Templar, like all these kind of things are thrown in together. Like, are they gelling well? Because I feel like the Adam Jensen ones are much more stripped down or focused on like the augmentation aspect. But
I would say no, but I wouldn't necessarily say that in a bad way. That's kind of the whole. That's part. At least for me, that was part of the whole charm of Deus Ex. Is it's just so. I mean, excuse my. It's so
sticks and stones.
Stupid.
I need to find another sound effect. I wonder if there's a sound effect from Deus Ex that I can use instead of a chocobo.
Let's just get like a grunt from JC Denton, like a gruff. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so grunting stupid and like it really, like you were saying earlier, Jono, it is like it's as if it takes place in a universe of like, what if every conspiracy theory you've ever heard, no matter how stupid or outlandish, not only were they true, but they were all true at once at the same like moment in time. So yeah, you've got the Illuminati, you've got Knights Templar, you've got aliens.
Yeah, MJ12.
Yeah, which I wasn't even aware of that Deus Ex, playthrough Deus Ex taught
Deus
me
Ex
about
taught
MJ.
me about Majestic 12. I had no idea before I played that game.
Now I'm a believer.
Yeah, well,
doing the God of the Machines work.
But
Truly.
Deus Ex coasts so far on its feel and on its the way it connects itself to you. I mean, those in-sim aspects, but also the locales, the hub worlds. I don't want to get off the first one before talking a little bit about Hong Kong. Like, that's an all-timer hub world, I think, to date.
Yeah, it's probably it's my favorite, but it probably is the best level in the game.
Also, the music in Deus Ex rocks, and that
oh my
carries
God,
it further still.
I was waiting till Patrick came up to talk about the music, but yeah, we'll talk about that in a bit. Not to pigeonhole you, Patrick.
I am happy to be pigeonholed. I do love the music to this series, and Alexander Brandon, who worked on, I don't know if he worked on Invisible War, he certainly is, he did the first soundtrack, and I think
the people who did the soundtrack for Invisible War were involved. If it was just one composer, then it would have been him who's also involved in Invisible.
Yeah, Alexander Brandon is a very talented composer, and I think that theme he wrote for the first game, that like main theme that you get in the intro cutscene with Bob Page and all that. I think it's even reused in Human Revolution as a callback during that intro scene that also includes Bob Page. It's iconic in the way that the X-Men animated series opening sequence is iconic.
My gosh,
electrifying you. Yeah,
I never made that connection, but yeah, totally.
Yeah, they use a similar soundscape, similar instrumentation, and I think Alexander Brandon nailed it on that alone. I also think the sort of the ambient environment tracks for some of the missions in Deus Ex, they're easy to miss, and I think that's part of what makes them good. Giving them an independent listen, you can kind of pick up on some of the neater things he does, especially with like stereo mixing, panning, and that kind of thing.
Let's move on now. I appreciate this is going to be a pretty big episode, so we need to get on to the next game, especially because this is a game that is, I suspect that the audience of this episode, if I would argue that this is probably the one that the least people have played, and probably for pretty good reason. So, Tom, Deus Ex, obviously, you loved it. You had a really, really great time with it. You gave it a great score. You gave it a 95, I think?
Yeah, 95, yeah.
Yeah, so it holds up. It holds up very, very well.
Absolutely.
And this game was obviously a massive success, and such a massive success that they were like, we need a sequel. And then clearly executives are like, we need a sequel, but we need to be different from all of the things that worked in the first game because we're executives, because executives never change. So they were like, okay, we're going to put it on Xbox. We're not going to originally put it on consoles. This needs to be a console first experience. And as such, it needs to be simplified. We need to screw around with it. But it's going to be a sequel. And boy, did they release a sequel. So Pete, you took on the challenge of reviewing Deus Ex Invisible War. This was released 3 years after the original. Warren Spector had nothing to do with it. And yeah, why don't you give us a brief idea of what this game is about?
It is a Deus Ex game that they made for the Xbox. That is that's the long and short of it. I'll say this. There's some really exciting things that they were pushing with Invisible War. They suddenly had this. I mean, the Xbox is tremendous. No one's going to say, no one can say anything bad to me about the Xbox. The Xbox is great. The Xbox pioneered all kinds of rendering techniques that we took for granted for many years. They were first done on or made mainstream by the Xbox. And so the prospect of taking some of that stuff and putting it in a Deus Ex game, I think is pretty exciting. So physics calculations being the big thing. That's not an Xbox thing only, but, ragdoll physics, object physics, and so on. That is a perfect fit for Deus Ex, a game in which you stack boxes. And there's things like rendering techniques like bump mapping on textures, which is really exciting. And this game ran on Unreal 2, but some of the technology that they injected in Unreal 2 for this and for Thief Deadly Shadows, the Thief game that they made for Xbox first, I actually think that game is pretty good. It's got major issues, but I think that game is very good. They do some really wild things with lighting that would probably surprise you if you looked at it and realized when it came out. They do really great light simulations, shadows, like kind of, I guess you would call them like stencil shadows that project out from the light source as they interact with the object that like passes by the light. And so they have fun with it. They have lights that hang from a cord or from a flexible hanging fixture, and you can throw an object at it and the light will get thrown around and shine and cast shadows as it kind of moves around, really. And it's really
the ray
cool.
tracing of the early 2000s.
Sure, they're tracing something. I mean, they're calculating kind of position and stuff, and yeah, so in order to cast shadows. And at times it could look pretty good, but I don't know what it was. Like, I could have looked it up earlier, but I don't know how much RAM the Xbox has in it or something. But all of these hub areas, which were a really strong part of the first game, and in subsequent games, I would say are probably the strongest part, those open hub areas, they're handicapped horribly in this one, unfortunately, just because they have to break it up in such small sections. When this game came out, I remember hearing reviews about it and reading reviews about it and thinking, the consensus from the review was always, well, you've heard, such and such bad things about this game, but it's not as bad as you think it is. It's pretty good. You should check it out. And my thought was always like, well, what are these bad things? You can read the reviews and they talk about the issues that the game has, and it's just like, I don't know, I never heard anyone hate this game. I hear everyone trying to like weirdly defend it from imaginary people who don't like it. But now I completely understand what they were reacting to, because no area in any Deus Ex game is this like huge open vast space. But in Invisible War, everything is so cramped. The opening hub, Seattle, it's like a series of hallways. It's like the Seattle. Yeah, the Seattle metro station is as big as like, I don't know. It's like I think my it's like my front deck or something. It's like it's really, everything's so cramped. Everything, at least in Deus Ex, they make you believe in where you are. They make you believe that this is a place. That they make you believe that where you are is a real place. And in Human Revolution, anytime the game wants to connect with these like physics interactions or really great lighting, and I actually think when combat happens, I think the AI is pretty interesting. Like the enemy behavior is pretty interesting. Whenever robots chase you down, they'll like bump into tables and knock crap off the table with physics, and it's all like really cool. Every time it wants to connect with you with this thing, it just like rips you away by these really tiny environments that are also, by the way, really empty. And so I don't know if it's that much more empty in the first game or in the second game than in the first game, but in the first game, you really believed in where you were a lot more than in the second game. A place like Hong Kong, it felt like it was bustling, you know. Whereas in Human Revolution, at least with Seattle, it feels so just lonely. And the hub worlds do
I've heard
get
Seattle
better
feels
as
like
the
that
game.
anyway, though.
I've never been. I have not. But the hub worlds improve, and I will say the missions I think are pretty. And the story is way dumber than the first game, even. But the missions are fun, and the hub worlds get a little bit better as they progress.
For the record, 64 megabytes of DDR. So not what you would call a roaring PC at the time, but pretty respectable for a console of the early 2000s.
Yeah, I would say so. I think what killed them was the rendering. I think all that lighting and physics was tough on whatever they were running that thing.
I think a lot of the problem was there was I've not played Invisible War, so I cannot speak authoritatively about this, but if I had to take a guess, I would bet the problem here is just different philosophies of game design based on console versus PC, especially at the time. Because in the early 2000s, because of the disparity between graphic capabilities on the PC versus consoles, even the Xbox and original PlayStation or PlayStation 2, PCs were infinitely more capable. They could do so much more just because they had so much more horsepower behind them. They cost so much more. You could get extra RAM, you could get a better graphics card, etc. So Deus Ex was designed with that in mind, and then that was ported over to consoles. Whereas if you're going console first, you're already working with compromises. And those compromises eventually are going to spill over to the full game when it's eventually released on the PC. And that will be disappointing if you are expecting what the original game was, because that was built under an entirely different design philosophy and different design constraints.
It was a pretty unfortunate era of ports like that too, where they were developing for consoles, then porting. And that carried into the next generation. I think we talked about BioShock earlier. I love BioShock, but mouse and keyboard controls on the original release of BioShock, because it was designed for controller first. But so it's a symptom of the time. It's unfortunate, these are very beloved properties. You're talking about Deus Ex and Thief, ones that are dear to me, that this happened to. And it's a shame.
Well, all I can say is thank God the days of disappointing PC ports are over.
Oh, for sure. You kidding me? Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Man, they really figured it out.
Yeah. Well, let's actually talk. So you've talked about some of the things that this game is really good at. So immersion in terms of the actual, I guess, physics of the world, lighting, shadow effects, things like that are gorgeous. However, the world feels cramped and empty, which are two words that you don't really want described to an immersive sim. Also, they did some stuff with the combat that didn't really work. You mentioned in your review there's a unified ammunition system.
Oh, the unified ammunition system and just inventory system in general is bonkers. And to be generous with them, you can see where they're coming from. Although anyone who ever talks about this, it seems to come from a perspective of like, I don't get why anyone likes this. I love it. It seems like everyone in the world doesn't understand why anyone doesn't like it. They love it. And that's like the Tetris inventory system. I can see that being troublesome for somebody. I like it. Most people, I can't say most people do, but a lot of people who talk about that topic seem to like that kind of like inventory management. And the first game had it. You had to arrange your stuff on a grid, and you can upgrade your backpack and have more room and everything. And the subsequent games did as well. This one just gives you slots, and it doesn't matter if it's a multi-tool that could fit in your pocket or if it's a rocket launcher. It takes up a slot. And there's wild multi-tool bugs. I can't remember how to duplicate it, but there's a way that you can pick up a multi-tool and then get a duplicate of one multi-tool in a different slot. And multi-tools are important. That's cool, except you're taking up a slot. You have, I think, 10 in total, 10 slots in total. And sometimes when you need to open a multi-tool acts as like a lockpick. And so sometimes if you need multiple multi-tools to, for example, open a door, and you have one in one slot and one in the other, and let's say that you need two to open a door, it will not do it because you don't have two. You have one and one. Hello? And the way that the ammo works, it's all unified. So flamethrower ammo is the same as pistol ammo, which is the same as your like tranquilizer dart ammo.
It's the future.
Yeah, it's the future, man. I don't know. It's like it makes you just scream. Why? It's just the biggest head scratcher.
I feel like that is a symptom of what we were talking about a few minutes ago, which is the idea that because the consoles are a little bit less capable and expansive, you streamline as much as you possibly can, and in this particular case, they went a little too far.
Yeah, I think they were trying to they were trying to design it for a controller. Thankfully, the later games came along and they realized, oh, even if you have a controller, you could still do. But in my mind, you're taking something that could be frustrating for some players, trying to like arrange your inventory in a space, and making it into this like terribly, like this infinitely more frustrating system in which you could end up with 2 multi-tools, but you can't open a 2 multi-tool lock. This is a game that, honestly, there are worse games, okay? There are worse games. I wouldn't even say that it's bad. I think it's just crossing over from okay to like good-ish territory. And, but even if it is just kind of good, it's extremely frustrating. Like, it makes me mad. Certain little aspects of it just make me angry, even though the game isn't that bad.
It's a game that probably suffers in comparison to its initial, to its original entry.
Well, that might be its biggest crime, is that it's not Deus Ex, right? I think that there's some of this stuff could have been avoided regardless, but still, I mean, it's a shame I had to follow up Deus Ex.
One question I had for you is, does this game and the original game, do they have like the sense of verticality that the Adam Jensen games have, like where you're crawling through vents and like, you know, you said it's tight and cramped, but like, is there a lot of levels to it vertically?
I think they managed to fit just about the same amount of like interaction in each space. So there are terminals to hack, there are guards you can sneak by, there are there's definitely vents. There's got to be vents. If they didn't put vents in this game, man, we'd have serious problems. But no, yeah, you can definitely, you can get into broken elevator shafts and climb up and access a vent from there to get to like someone's apartment building or whatever. Yeah, that stuff's still here.
Just looking at them like both visually, the original really made me think visually of Knights of the Old Republic, that kind of like early 2000s like emptiness, flat walls and everything. This one, like the lighting and everything, it reminded me of Doom 3 a lot. Like, like I was pretty impressed by the graphics of it just from like videos and screenshots. But
the rendering techniques they use are very advanced for the time. Oh man, I wish I knew when Doom 3 came out, because
2004.
This was definitely all right. And Invisible War 2001, so this would have predated.
No, 2003.
1 year apart. Sorry.
Yeah, and also 1 year apart from Half-Life 2 as well, which comes out in 2004.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it was definitely that milieu. They had been figuring out shadows. I mean, in a lot of ways, this era of lighting is kind of more exciting than the eras that came after. I think now we're in sort of another renaissance of lighting rendering with ray traced shadows and global and all that stuff. But there was a time when they were pushing these rendering techniques arguably a little bit beyond what they should have, and you ended up with games that had cool rendering in other areas.
I think the next game is kind of guilty of like the lens flare, like the J.J. Abrams style lens flare, like everything is yellow and shining in your eyes. But
there's the color palette of Human Revolution is just, everything looks like it's happening at sunset and not in a good way.
Everything is through like beer goggles.
I love it.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. I love the way that Human Revolution looks. If I'm the only one who thinks that, that's fine.
No, me too. I completely agree. Yeah.
We'll talk about it in a minute. I wanted to finish this one off by saying I think that this game, as I said, suffers in comparison to its original entry. But regardless, I think it's the kind of game that if the original didn't exist, this might be held in slightly higher esteem today than it is. But at the same time, it's like, well, it's an evolutionary dead end for the series, essentially, because that's what it became. It was an evolutionary dead end. It came out in 2003. The next game wasn't out for 2011. Like, it took a long break for a reason.
I mean, if you want to assign this to kind of like the theory of evolution, it would be like a failed mutation that thankfully died out, and then we got a good version later on.
And we did get a good version later on. In fact, arguably, this is probably the most popular game outside of the original that's coming up. Pete, thank you for taking this one on. I know this was a challenge because of a variety of bugs that you faced. Unlike the original Deus Ex, Invisible War doesn't have quite the same amount of free labor from the internet to make this thing stable.
Yeah, I mean, I had my fun with it. I didn't regret playing it. You can get it to run on the Steam Deck if you want to do that. That's how I did.
Yeah, which is great. Let's move on now to quite a few years in the future. So like we said, the game kind of went into hibernation for a little while, and then it suddenly came exploding out of nowhere. Eidos Montreal decided to take it on, and they created Deus Ex Human Revolution. And instead of continuing the story further into the future, they decided to take a massive step backwards in time, about 25 years. And let's look at the origins of this world and augmentations and things like that. So, Patrick, you played Human Revolution. Why don't you tell us a little bit about this game?
Man, this game is super fun to play. So you take on the role of a character named Adam Jensen,
which is a very 2010s name of a video game hero.
Yeah, and I'll also point in the religious symbolism, as the Apostle Paul wrote, the first man was Adam and the last man was Christ. Also, JC has a sort of twin brother named Paul. I like to point that out as well.
Paul. Yeah.
Author of, I mean, the lead characters are Christian-ish, is very interesting. Adam Jensen works for a company called Serif Industries. It's spelled S-A-R-I-F, but when you say it out loud, you could hear S-E-R-A-P-H, led by one David Serif. So again, there's a lot of religious connotation around all that.
Either that or an obsession with fonts.
It could be an obsession with fonts. Adam Sans Serif would be his evil doppelganger.
We'll get into that in the next game, actually, because there's a bunch of conspiracy theories about that. But keep going.
They changed voice actors. Yeah. So Adam Jensen is a dude who never asked for this, and what this is that he never asked for is human augmentation. What's happening in the prologue is essentially Adam is a bodyguard. He's a former member of like a SWAT team. He got fired. The reasons why come out if you do enough side quests. And his ex-girlfriend is a super smart scientist named Megan Reed. And they give you a whole lot of exposition in that first hour. But basically, some folks show up and kidnap Megan Reed in the middle of what should have been normal, safe experience in the company's own HQ. And you, as Adam, almost die at the hands of an augmented person. But for some reason, you're not quite dead. They come and rescue in time. And
they RoboCop you. Yeah,
you get a ton of augmentations, and it takes you a good 6 months to recover. So you get the prologue where you're just a dude, and now you're a dude with metal blades that can shoot out of your arms near where your elbow is, maybe forearms. It's a little more intense than Wolverine from my perspective. And your chest can just shoot shrapnel and bullets out of it. That's the Typhoon system. There's just all kinds of madness that your body's capable of doing. However, it's an unlock system as you play through the game. So whether you want to be good at typhooning or falling from great heights or hacking systems, which one you want to get good at first is up to you. But ultimately, if you play through the whole game and you do all the side quests, you're going to have everything unlocked by the end. So that's kind of how the game starts. We hit up some familiar locales. It starts in Detroit, which is a fairly unique setting for at least this series. You go to China. You go to Shanghai, which is this super artificial island, two-tiered, almost like Midgar. Unfortunately, they don't really give you much of the upper tier. If they had done a whole hub on upper tier, I think it would have been a perfect game. You go to Montreal and hunt down an AI who controls the news.
I mean, you kind of go to Montreal, right?
Yeah, you go to a building. And she seems like she might be a good guy in Human Revolution. She seems less sympathetic to your cause in Mankind Divided, but we'll get to that in Mankind Divided. You get to see all this stuff, and then there's a big climax in another artificial environ near, like in the Arctic Ocean, called not Pangea, but Panchaea, with a CH instead of a G. And this sort of uber wealthy philosopher, scientist, entrepreneur named Hugh Darrow does something really messed up that sets the stage for the entirety of Mankind Divided, and also makes for an insane final zone and final mission.
And a real good last choice, too.
Yeah, I do like the last choice as well.
It has an ending.
Yes, it has 3-ish endings. Unfortunately, all and none of them are canon when you get to...
that sounds very familiar.
The 4th one. Yeah, they played that game again. So Human Revolution is great. I do want to focus on the gameplay real quick, if that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Because like I said earlier, when I played this at time of release, I went after all of the achievements. And I do like to do achievement/trophy hunting. I don't do it with every game I play. This was one of the most rewarding experiences I've had in achievement hunting, because the challenge level, not just with taking a pacifist route, where like the condition is if you kill one single person, you don't get the achievement at the end.
Even if the guy wants to die, maybe?
Yes. Bosses are excluded because bosses have to die.
Which is actually a somewhat controversial point of this game.
Yeah, that there weren't multiple ways to tackle boss sequences is kind of frustrating.
Especially if you spec yourself out for stealth and non-violent confrontations, and then you have to fight these beasts of bosses.
Right.
Technically under-leveled.
Right, yeah. I mean, what they do is, whatever the arena is, you run around and they just have shotguns and rocket launchers laying around, and you just have to move and do that, since none of it's going to be in your inventory. You just have stun guns and stuff. So they offer the solution, but I agree with you. It's a point of contention.
There's one boss in Mankind Divided. I think they took that into account. And there's an achievement if you don't kill him that says bosses are people too. But
oh yeah,
anyway.
I remember that one. Yeah. But yeah, there's an even harder achievement, which this also exists in Mankind Divided, and I didn't attempt it for Mankind Divided, at least not yet. It's called the Foxiest of the Hounds, and this is an achievement for being so gosh darn stealthy that you never alarm anyone or anything. No cameras set off alarms, no tripwires, and no humans go from their yellow status of something's going on to the red status of, okay, we found you and we're shouting for our friends to gang up on you. You can never, through the whole game, be detected, essentially. And that is so difficult. And also, if you're into this style of gameplay, so much fun. I mean, it requires hitting people with tranq darts and stun guns and then dragging their bodies out of the way so that, like, other patrolling people don't see it. You know, it involves being able to, disable all tech like cameras and the laser trip lines, before they can see you, and also just dodging around them stealthily. It is one of the hardest things I've ever done in a video game, and I enjoyed the crap out of it. I think this speaks to, even though the game doesn't offer as many sort of problem-solving avenues as the first Deus Ex, I would argue, mission per mission, there's usually just sort of one or two ways to do the thing you want to do. To go extreme with it and just be like, hey, here's a crazy idea. Never get seen doing anything like bad ever. And that they track it well. I just think that playthrough that I did is probably the most memorable experience I've had with the whole series. And, so for anyone who's like, oh yeah, I played Human Revolution, it was fun, whatever. It's like, okay, try playing it with like some insane limitations and let me know, like, do you hate it or are you enjoying it? Because I found I really enjoyed it when I played not just pacifist, but full stealth. All right, that's my soapbox.
It's a good soapbox.
Oh, thank you.
I think one of the reasons I love this game so much is that, yeah, of course, there's outstanding level design, gorgeous level design, really great story. There is a color palette that some very much enjoy and others think is a little bit yellow. But one of the reasons I love this game so much is because I think it has an astonishingly strong supporting cast. Like, Adam Jensen's voice acting is terrific, but like other characters in the game really do flesh out this world in a way that makes it feel very real to me.
Yeah, the sound design, like not to mention the soundtrack too, is like so stylish and underrated. Like the Michael McCann soundtrack is fantastic, just like the original, but in a totally different vibe than the original. But yeah, I was also impressed by the voice acting. I kind of, in my memory, playing this as like a teenager, I guess, I hated like the gruffness of his voice because it was like Cole McGrath from Infamous or like any other like, protagonist of that era. But like playing it now and playing the Mankind Divided now, I'm like, no, this is like a very intelligent character and intelligently voiced. Like, I really fell for Adam this time.
The character that really impressed me the most in Human Revolution, and actually this is thrown into even sharper contrast today, is David Seraph. Because we have here a billionaire CEO, of which we have many today, and this is a man who thinks he's going to save the world. He is a true believer in his cause, and the character exists in a real state of, is he a good guy? Is he a bad guy? What does he want? Like that kind of thing. And I thought that was a really interesting thing to have through the game. Like, when I remember the first time I played it, I wasn't entirely certain whether or not Seraph was going to be revealed as like the master villain at the end of it, or if he was going to be revealed as a victim. It's a real shades of gray kind of character, which I really like, especially considering we currently have, unfortunately, way too many billionaires in the world who think they're going to save the world with various worldviews that are incompatible with reality, much like David Seraph.
Yeah, and like a lot of those billionaires, he has a charm to him too. I mean, I think David Seraph is such a tremendously charming character. It does make him more sinister, and just the sort of color and texture of his voice acting. I'm not sure who did the voice, but the way he has a little bit of a rasp to his voice, but he's also so articulate and has a really wonderful. Like, it could be a voice that could be on radio almost. He's got kind of that timbre to it, but there's also a little bit of a rasp. The rasp tells you, like, I don't know, this just came into my head. The rasp tells me, as I think about it, like, okay, this is someone who has seen things, done things, maybe, maybe there's some edge to this person that they don't want me to see, but I can sort of detect. But his articulateness, the timbre of his voice, is very media trained, like a lot of front-facing billionaires now.
Well, like, this is the guy, I don't want to bring real-world politics into this, but the reality is it takes place in 2027. Like, in this world, Donald Trump would still be the president of the United States, which accounts for the dystopia aspect of it. But, like, you could totally see Seraph being, like, Trump's advisor for augmentation or some
Sticks and stones.
like that.
Completely. And he could win a lot of people over just because he's good with media,
Exactly. So I think that idea is actually ahead of its time, because there were billionaires in 2011, but they didn't have quite the same level of cultural cachet that they do today in terms of the prolific nature of Zuckerberg or Musk or Bezos, that kind of thing. Well, ignoring the cultural impact of billionaires in today's world, which, again, this is like, I mean, it takes place in 2027, but the reason why I really like these games, especially the second two, is because they are set in, like 15 years after the game was released. So they could actually create a much more plausible future than the one that we currently, like, obviously we don't have augmentation, but we do have AI in a form. So the future that these people live in doesn't feel so far removed from our own that it's unrecognizable. Like, the struggles and the problems and basically what human beings are is very true to our current reality in these games. The motivations of people in these games are recognizable to me, if that makes a certain amount of sense. If augmentations actually existed, I think this is how people would react to them.
Although one thing completely implausible I remember is there was a poster on some walls of Final Fantasy 27 in Human Revolution. And I'm like, yeah, the way we're going, that's not going to be until like 2090, probably.
They still got 2 more years. That's 2 more not E3s. I'm sure they can get there.
Yeah, I actually mentioned the poster in my written review that they prognosticated poorly about how rapidly Square Enix was going to ship sequels.
Yeah.
The most inaccurate thing about Human Revolution isn't the augmentations. It's that there's going to be that many Final Fantasy games by now. Yeah. That's pretty funny. Yeah. Patrick, the last thing I wanted to ask you about this game is a graphical thing. This has nothing to do with the game. I just think it's kind of funny. Back in these days, because in-game engines weren't quite as powerful, if they wanted to show things off that look real good, they would always go with pre-rendered cutscenes. And that's pretty funny because even with like modern graphic tools and graphic cards, the pre-rendered cutscenes don't look quite as good as the actual gameplay nowadays.
Yeah, I think I noted that in my review as well. That
you did.
Yeah, when I played it back at time of release, the pre-rendered FMVs were the prettiest part. Now they're the least impressive part. If you have a good PC, now you set everything to highest if you can do it, and the in-game experience looks a lot better than the recorded cutscenes. And I just think that's very interesting.
It's very funny.
Yeah, it is.
At least I think it's very funny. Well, Human Revolution was a pretty big hit, and obviously, if you have a pretty big hit, what you do is you make a sequel, and you upgrade it and you make it even better. And honestly, except for some problems with the ending, I think they did. So there was a difference of 5 years here, and in those 5 years, a lot of things changed. Graphics became obviously way better. There were a lot more advancements in in-game storytelling, things like that. And the game we got is Deus Ex: Mankind Divided. So with some spoilers about the ending of Human Revolution without getting into details, something big happens at the end of Human Revolution that basically poisons the population of the world against folks who are augmented. So all of a sudden, the world of Deus Ex: Mankind Divided is much more augments are persecuted. In a way that is actually somewhat familiar to some groups nowadays. Again, there are quite a few parallels here between this world and our world today, and it resonates. For me, it resonates anyway. So, Matt, why don't you give us a brief rundown of the plot here?
Yeah, sure. Mankind Divided, it starts in 2029, the far distant future of 2029. And yeah, like you said, it's 2 years after what they call the AUG incident in the game. And yeah, it does feel like this kind of, I don't know, like you feel this kind of like post 9/11 influence or something. Like there's some great tragedy, and the animosity between naturals and AUGs, or like clanks as they call them, is like at an all-time high. And even these like progressive city states, like it takes place in Prague, in the Czech Republic. And Prague is supposed to be this like AUG haven, but it doesn't feel that way right from the start, after the prologue, because you have these heavily armed guards and like even these like mech police patrolling the streets all the time. And they're always like, talking down to you, and like everybody is staring at you as you're walking through the streets in the open world, the semi-open world. And there were a lot of great details. Like I went to Prague like a few months ago for my honeymoon, and I was kind of shocked at how like realistic it looked in this game, like without one-to-one copying anything. Like you can see the bridge and like Prague Castle in the distance, and it's great to see like the kind of sci-fi-ified skyline and everything like that. But the subway system that you used to get around, which is kind of unnecessary in this game, but it's very accurate. But one of the details I liked is that there's a human line and an AUG line, and if you accidentally walk down the human line, you'll get stopped by the police, and they'll like check your ID, and like Adam will be like, is this really necessary? And like, come on, and it does annoy you when you're trying to like sneak through, and it's like you can feel the oppression even as a player, which is a detail I really liked. But yeah. So sorry, Adam is no longer like this chief security officer from Seraph Industries. He's now brought back Jason Bourne style as like this agent for Task Force 99, which is this counterterrorism thing, like this international coalition agency. So he's a secret agent now, or a police agent. But he's, the police of Prague are very much pitted as like the enemy. So he's the good cop, not the bad cops, but yeah, and so the ongoing tension is between Task Force 29, the law of the world, and then the Augmented Rights Coalition, like ARC they call it, which is this underground rebel group headed by this very charismatic guy who I forget his name off the top of my head, but they're run out of Golem City, which is like the name for this Aug city that's basically like a ghetto slum on the outside of Prague. So yeah, it's,
again a slight Golem City. You're not a real person.
Yeah, right. That's Man of Clay kind of thing. Yeah, there's a lot of like that religious imagery again, and even like a lot of the advertising had like Adam Jensen with these like big yellow angel wings, like these like cybernetic angel wings. But yeah, it felt very tense, and it's funny to hear that like the original games were so goofy because I thought this game was like so smartly written. Like I would put it up there with like the smartest science fiction ever of any medium. Like, and in the realm of games, I'm like, this is like so much smarter than like most games. So I loved it. I mean, I gave it an 85 if I can say that, and it does have problems like which we'll talk about, but like I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I was like very invested in it the whole time.
I was too. I think this game is great. I also think the game still looks fantastic.
Yeah.
Like it's 10 years old at this point, or 9 years old at this point, and it just looks gorgeous.
Yeah, and part of that is to do with the fact that like they kind of did away partially with the PP filter. Like it's less yellow. Not that I hate the yellow, but it's just like it does get a little bit like much. Like a lot of the games of that era, it's like they chose one color and they stick to it for the entirety of the game. But this one, like,
to be fair, everything in Detroit is that color.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. Yeah, so the globetrotting here, it does go to interesting locales. Like the opening mission is in Dubai, and then you're in Prague for most of it for like the between the main missions, and then you go to like this kind of Arctic level. Like, you know, they're really checking off all the boxes in this one again.
Mm-hmm. The gameplay here is somewhat similar to the original. The gameplay here is somewhat similar to Human Revolution. You have you still have the lethal, non-lethal, stealthy. You can go in guns blazing, that kind of thing. I always play stealth. It's just how I like to play. How do you play it?
I started off going like non-lethal stealth because like it gives you like in the prologue like the choice of what you want to be equipped with as you're like rappelling into Dubai. And so I went with like stun long range, and I actually ended up playing the entire game without killing a single soul, and I got like a gold trophy for that. And it was really challenging, but canonically I just thought like Adam doesn't seem like the kind of guy that would kill anybody. You know what I mean? Like he's a cop, so it felt weird for me to like kill the police of Prague, no matter how like whatever you want to say, like speciesist they are to him.
It's interesting too, because I feel like his job essentially is to, this sounds terrible, to provide a good example. Like if he was going out and he was going out guns blazing and terrifying the populace, like that sort of goes against his very raison d'etre. You know what I mean?
Yeah, very much so. And like the characters will actually react to like, if you go in guns blazing, they'll be like, geez, Adam, like, you know, you really tore them up. And it just felt like the right thing to do for the character, like the role playing element of it. He's a good guy, but he's like firm. He's like the sheriff of the future, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One of the things that I love about this game too, we were talking about Prague. Prague is such a great walled garden open world. I think it's gorgeous. I think it has so much character, and the juxtaposition between the high tech of the future and the low tech of the history of the city is so brilliantly manifested in the visual presentation.
Yeah, it was very convincing. Like even if I had never been to Prague, I would have been like, yeah, it feels like I'm in Europe. You know what I mean? Just like, it was convincing with like Hong Kong in the old games.
I have not been to Prague, and that was exactly my feeling. I was like, I bet this is what Prague is like, because this feels like a European city, like really well designed.
Yeah, and like the first half of the game, Prague is cast in like daylight, and then like a story event happens elsewhere in the world, and then like you're then patrolling around Prague at night. And at night, like the cyberpunk elements of it really come out, where like there's like these big neon billboards, and there's like the red light district with like big neon women dancing around kind of thing, right? Like it did suddenly feel like a lot more sci-fi-ish, and I thought like they did a great job of showing the realistic side of the future, and then like the side that, you know, players probably want to see, right? The Blade Runner kind of aspect of it.
Prague might actually be my favorite location in the series in terms of like level design too. Just like the openness, which is crazy coming straight off of the original Deus Ex. Not that that's inferior in any way. It's just I just really liked what they did with Prague in Mankind Divided.
It's a real good central. I guess it's an open world, but it's also sort of a hub for all of the missions that you go on.
And like you said earlier, like you alluded to, like the side missions, the main story, you can beeline the main story, and it's very satisfying, and like it makes for a great like kind of thriller movie kind of feel. But the side missions are really great too, and they carry a lot of choice. You know what I mean? Like there's the whole thing with like the clockmaker or whatever, and his daughter who may or may not be a terrorist, and there's like human trafficking rings going on with like augmented people where they're like stripping them down for parts.
And you can investigate too. You have investigative abilities.
Yeah. It just felt very alive. You know what I mean? Like it was one of the most like living open worlds I've ever seen. And like I'm not a big fan of most open worlds. Like I'm like I don't need to walk in my game that much, but it's like just the right amount of size where it's like, it feels big enough, but not I don't know, plain, not empty in any way.
There's also the weird cult side mission, which was my favorite in that game.
Which cult?
It's like where you go underground, and there's like a guy on a big TV who's like brainwashing everyone.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I just always found that one really fun.
That's a good side mission. There are a lot of I think the side missions on this one, I don't know why, but they stuck out to me. They felt a little more salient and tied to the main story than Human Revolution, even though Human Revolution also had good side missions. I think in my first and only playthrough of Mankind Divided, I hit up every single side mission, and I definitely enjoyed that. And I just wanted to comment real quick about, you had mentioned, Matt, the clockmaker and the daughter. There are a handful of times that the game is kind of giving you an option one direction or the other. Essentially, are you going to work with this group called the Juggernaut Collective and give information to Alex Vega and eventually Janus? Or are you going to kind of stick to your team at Task Force 29 and work with your director, Miller? Is it Stephen Miller? And there's a point you can kind of play both sides if you want, but there comes a point where you really have to choose one or the other. And it seems that if you're going to follow Task Force 29, you go with the clockmaker sequence and you save the daughter. If you choose to do the work that Janus wants you to do with Juggernaut, you break into this crazy bank that holds data. It's a data bank at the Palisades, and it's a crazy mission, but the game makes it clear to you as you go deeper into one or the other, hey, if you don't turn around now, you're like, there's a point of no return. You only get to do one mission or the other. And they make it abundantly clear, which I really like, because at the very end of the game, in the final mission, they kind of make it look like you only have the choice to save some people or save some other people. But in fact, if you play well enough, if you have the right items, if you're fast enough, you can do both, and you can do them in either order. But I like that they made a choice feel more real, because you really could only do one or the other in each playthrough. And I personally went with the bank break-in, which I thought was super fun.
Yeah, it's such a good mission.
As you're doing the bank break-in, you're getting like radio comms from the clockmaker, and he's like, "Why aren't you helping us?" And
and you're like, "No, I want to help,
Yeah.
but there's only one of me." Yeah.
But the Illuminati, and like
Interesting you say that. We're going to talk about that in a second.
Oh yes, that is a thing.
Yeah, you're chasing like the shadows of the Illuminati, and to a point where it's like you're, aside from cutscenes, you're like, is this really like the right cause? Like the larger cause that Janus is fighting for? Is Janus a trustworthy, hacktivist kind of guy? Yeah, I love that. So I did kind of feel like the final mission's choice was a bit of a cop out, where it's like, do this or do this. Oh, do both. Okay, and it's the villain, which is like a total letdown, like this Russian arc guy, so generic, but he is just like,
yeah,
he seems to be intimidating, and then he's just like I'm waiting, Adam, while you do the other mission. Don't take too long. And it's like, okay, like, you're just going to wait for me either way. Like, that felt a little bit of a cop out.
If you don't make it within 10 minutes, he does blow up. Like, he does go through with the terrorism plot if you don't hustle.
Oh, really?
Yeah, no, it's not a false choice. You have to play well to get that. And then also, like, did you save Miller?
I did, because I went to the bank, which I think if you didn't go to the bank, you wouldn't be able to save him. Yeah.
Right.
Jim Miller, by the way, not Steven.
Oh.
The parallels are not that close.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Jim Miller. Yeah, you even if you have it, though, he gives you the option, like, you can save him, or, like, if you run into him before you found the VIP guests, he's like, save it for them in case they get infected, which they can if you choose to do that 1 second. And you got to move really fast then as well. So they actually, from my perspective, they built it well, though I think without a walkthrough telling you everything that I just told you, you don't really know that these options are real and the stakes are that high.
Yeah, this game provides a lot of choice that actually does matter.
And they are transparent with the choice. Yeah, like I do like that.
The last thing I wanted to ask you about with this game is the DLC is a bit controversial here. One piece of DLC is the most pointless piece of DLC it's literally just like a mission that was cut from the game that just didn't need to be there. The one piece of DLC literally feels like a deleted scene.
I did not touch the DLC, to be honest with you. I played a bit of the like challenge VR missions, kind of like the Metal Gear Solid style VR missions, and I wasn't blown away with that. And like, it just is very of its time of like, download the in-game app or like download the companion app. And it just felt like, this is not, it's going to just sour my experience, I feel like. So I didn't include that in my review.
Did you do any of the Breach stuff, Matt?
That's what I mean. Yeah, that's the VR stuff.
Oh,
Breach.
That's the VR stuff. Gotcha. Okay.
And it's like fine if you want more of the gameplay, but it just feels like a wasted opportunity a little bit. Like, there's nothing compelling to keep you in, I think.
There are 3 pieces of DLC for this game. The first one is literally, it's a deleted scene. It's you basically do a kind of low level investigation of the bomb scene. And it just doesn't really impact the story at all. Maybe it provides a little bit of context, but not really. The next one is basically a prison break kind of thing, which is actually I actually enjoyed that. The one that was a fair bit of fun. That was the last one. The last one is the system riff. You team up with a character from Frank Pritchard from the game before this, from Human Revolution, which is kind of fun. Criminal Past, I enjoy the prison mission. It's pretty big. It's interesting. There's a lot of stealth and sneaking around that's necessary because you get around the prison. DLC was pretty common back then. I think they're fine. So has anyone else played them?
I have not gotten to them yet, which I was hoping to, like, prior to recording this. I did not get to play them yet.
Don't worry about it. I don't think I've spoiled anything for you. Except for the fact that there's literally a deleted scene mission.
Yeah,
aside from
that's dumb. But yeah, the fact that one of the missions has you working with Pritchard. Pritchard was one of my favorite characters from Human Revolution. So
same.
Yeah, that's actually exciting. I want to play that.
That's the one I definitely have played because I love Pritchard also. Yeah.
Did anybody know about like the mole? They keep talking about like a mole in Task Force 29, but we never get the resolution to that plot line, except the truth was spoiled in like an art book. Does anybody here know who the mole is? Like, spoiler alert for the listener.
No.
Actually, no, I don't.
Yeah, so it's never talked about in game, but an art book confirmed that it's Chicane, the pilot, is the T-29 mole.
No way.
Yeah, right. Huh. Which I'm like, that's so interesting, but like, I wish they would have like alluded to that or something. Like,
yeah.
You know, so if we ever get a follow up, spoiler alert for like Adam Jensen 3, whatever it might be.
Well, actually, that'd be an interesting plot thread. That with Chicane being the mole would be an interesting plot thread that we could pick up in the third game, which unfortunately was canceled. But that doesn't necessarily mean that we're not going to get a third game at some point in the future. And this is something I wanted to ask everyone. Like, there are a lot of lingering plot threads at the end of this game for a variety of reasons. What would you like to see followed up with in the future? Like, how would you like to see Deus Ex, the Human Revolution, Mankind Divided 3? What would you like to see in that game?
I think, like, obviously, like, following up with the Illuminati, and spoiler alert for Mankind Divided, follow up with the Doctor character. without saying any more. But also, like, I think I want to see them reincorporate the conspiracy elements beyond that, like maybe hint at the Knights Templar, or even possibly hint at like the alien involvement. But it just feels a bit tonally, I don't know, far-fetched. But it's got to connect somehow.
Yeah, so I was just going to say, the one thing about the aliens that I meant to bring up earlier is it's implied in the original game that they are... I mean, it's not implied in a way as if, oh, this is the answer, but like it's hinted that they're like genetically altered animals and not necessarily actual aliens, which makes a lot more sense because they never friggin' talk about the fact that there are aliens running around in some of the levels.
Little green
so
men.
It makes it makes sense that like it's another one of their many experiments and not just another one of the Majestic 12's many experiments and not just, oh, by the way, yeah, aliens, whatever, blah, blah, blah. We'll skip past that.
We need lizard people, I think. That's a good middle ground. We need lizard people.
Oh, yeah,
in the third one. But
Yeah, we need to pick up on all the conspiracy theories for some reason.
In a third game, I just want actual answers when I complete missions or the game itself.
Yeah, really.
I know
Answers. That's dumb. Who wants answers?
I mean, yeah, I kind of get that, but like, yeah, there's so much that they could have said and still left a lot for a third game. And with this ending, they just said none of it. Whether you get bad ending or good ending, it's just you talking with Vega in your apartment, and then Eliza Kassan speaks on the TV for a while, and a whole lot of nothing is revealed. I mean, you can look in wikis to find out who Janus is. They're not a particularly important person in terms of tying to the first and second game. I want to know more about, someone said the doctor character. Yeah, the psychologist / therapist. They hint at something in a post-credit scene that makes it sound like she knows a lot more than she lets on, which is impressive considering there's side missions and all kinds of stuff around her that makes it feel like maybe she is the only person you can trust. And then it's like, oh, she's talking to the Illuminati. What? Like, there's just, it's so
There's so many questions.
Yeah, and then, we hinted at earlier, like, is David Seraph really David Seraph? Is Adam Jensen really Adam Jensen? What happened during the year he was presumably in Alaska being worked on? There's a side quest where you find out that none of the serial numbers from his original parts are there anymore. And, like, what? Like, I want answers.
This actually picks up on my favorite plot thread or hinted plot thread in the game, which I'll just mention really quickly because I think it's so cool. In the first game in Deus Ex, as I understand it, without spoilers, there is a cloning component to it. There is apparently not a cloning component to these games, except when you go to I don't know if any of you know this, maybe you do. When you go to the VersaLife vault for information, and inside the VersaLife vault is like debris from the explosion at the end of the first game and data and things like that. If you look behind some of the debris, there is a refrigeration unit. And if you fire off a flash grenade, you can see inside the window of the refrigerator unit, and it's Jensen.
wow, that's so cool.
I love
Sticks and stones.
like that. That's so cool.
Now, on the one hand, you could think, oh, it's clearly it's an asset model. It's just like they're just reutilizing an asset model. Except the asset model is named Jensen, and it really plays into the idea that none of your parts are the same, and like your memories are weird. And when you talk to Eliza Kassan at some point, she says, I have to get used to living with another version of myself out there. There's this duality, the idea that if you are not the original version, who are you? So I think that's where I would like to see the third game playing with the idea of identity, who you are if you are not the original version. I feel like that will have some relevance in the future, perhaps. Yeah, there's a whole Wikipedia page and probably countless YouTube videos exploring this theory, but I just adore that. The idea that the reason why Seraph says it too, he's like, when I installed this in Adam Jensen, and it just like goes over your head, but like clearly Seraph knows something that you don't and suspects that you are not actually who you think you are. And there's a lot of other things, like he talks about the missing year and not having his memories and his memories slowly coming back. So that could be an interesting thing. And it could be an interesting way to bridge the world of Human Revolution and Mankind Divided with the original series, in that apparently there's a Jensen in refrigeration storage. So who knows when he'll wake up? Maybe he can wake up 25 years in the future.
It would be interesting if, like, instead of like having to make the choice of like which side, you could just play both as different Adams. Like, that would be kind of an interesting like compromise.
Check out the YouTube page, because it's really interesting, and it's again, this is like, these are plot threads and nothing is ever said, but there are lines, like, for example, hang on, I'm going to the Wikipedia page here. There's a guy outside of the bank who is like talking crazy, and you kind of just dismiss everything that he says. But he also says, "Who is in the box? Do you know? I know. It's you in the box, in the dark. That's where they kept you, in the dark."
Oh my god! Cool.
Yeah.
Whoa.
And Kassan says, Eliza at one point, the real Eliza, not the duplicated Eliza, says, "Our memories are now being recovered, but they are inconsistent. Like you, for example, you are not consistent with our memories of you."
Yeah, this ties in because it's clear that they were building to something and building somewhere. Like, I'd always wondered, even before playing the original and now playing Invisible War, is like, why did they then go back several decades and do a prequel? I always found that interesting. And like, it's just clear to me that they were all building to something with a potential third game, and just the fact that we may not see it for another decade is just so frustrating.
It really is.
And yeah, I mean, more than anything, I just want more Adam Jensen, man. I'd love that dude so much.
Yeah, Jensen's a real good character.
Yeah, I mentioned in my Human Revolution review the voice actor Elias Tofexis is like I think he is a big part of what makes Jensen. Like, he made the character so memorable.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I after I looked him up and saw all the other stuff he's credited in, I just finished watching a TV show on Netflix called Blood of Zeus. It's one of those like anime, but the studios from all over the world, not just Japan. And he plays like a major character in it, named Seraphim. That's right. Like David Seraph.
Well, look, what I really hope, though, is that we don't discover the existence of Mankind Divided 3 with him tweeting out, "I'm not in it."
Oh, yes, that
don't
would
even
be very
put that
upsetting.
out into the universe.
Yeah,
don't put that evil out there, Jono.
Was that a reference to the Persona 4 remake?
It might just be a reference to the Persona 4 remake.
Yeah, that's not how I want to find out, because also, if it doesn't have him, like, that's going to be awful. Like, he is the voice of Adam Jensen. He does such a good job.
I think he makes a great like big boss kind of figure in the series. Like, he could be the big boss to like JC Denton's Solid Snake. You know what I mean? But if there is like cloning involved. But anyway, that's all.
Okay, folks. Thank you very, very much for joining me today about this. It was a fairly long conversation, but it's a pretty damn big game series, and this is a pretty damn big anniversary for it. I love this series. I'm really looking forward to. I want to play the recent the fan-made remaster that just got released, the newly revamped version of it. I think that's going to be really, really cool. I do not know if I will play Invisible War, but I really hope at some point in the future, at some naughty 3 in the future, we will get a reveal for a new Deus Ex game. And it'd be real nice if it came from the same developer. All right, well, let's talk about what's coming up here at Retro Encounter. Next week, because this is a kind of a special, we're doing 3 retros in a row because of the anniversary here. But next week is going to be a game journal focused on the classic SNES RPG Breath of Fire 2. I personally have very fond memories of playing Breath of Fire and Breath of Fire 2, although I do know that the localization of both, especially Breath of Fire 2, can be a little wonky. So I'm kind of excited to hear everyone's experience with this game. If you'd like to get in contact with us here at Retro Encounter, you can fire us off a message at retro@rpgfan.com. If you have any ideas for future games that you want us to focus on, ideas for discussions, things like that, fire us off a message. You can also, if you want to, keep supporting us, you can visit our shop at www.rpgfan.com/shop. There are lots of things sold in there, t-shirts, mugs. We have some new stuff actually coming up, which I can't mention, but there's going to be some new stuff that we'll be talking about on pretty much every podcast in a little while. But the thing you should pay attention to is our collaboration with Hyperplay RPG, the RPG Fan Review Card Collection, which is a showcase of nearly 300 of our review cards, as you can see on Instagram. And I suspect that some of those cards in there might just be Deus Ex games. Another way you can support us is check out our other podcasts. The first one is Random Encounter. It's bi-weekly on Monday, and that one is hosted by me. The last few weeks have been extremely active because we had Naughty 3, and just before that, we had the Switch 2. So we had 2 episodes in a row, so check out our Not E3 extravaganza, and then the episode immediately after that, taking a look at the Switch 2 and some of the games that were released on that. We also have Rhythm Encounter, which is RPG Fans' music podcast. Rhythm has been on hiatus for a couple of weeks, but they're really getting back on track. Coming up next Monday is going to be an episode focused on the music of mobile RPGs. If you enjoyed this podcast, you can please share it with your friends. You can help us get the word out there, and you can also rate us on iTunes or your other podcast player of choice. And now let's talk about where you can find each of us online. Tom, where can we find you online?
I go by Dupes or Yo Dupes online, DOOPS. Don't ask me why, I have no idea either. Blue Sky is pretty much the only social media I use these days for obvious reasons. So feel free to follow me there. And since the start of 2023, I've also been reviewing every single game I play on Backlogged. That's the word backlogged without the E. So yeah, backlog.com/you/yodupes. I believe I'm now at 262 reviews.
Not bad.
Yeah. So yeah.
And Pete, where can we find you online?
Nowhere. You can find my writings on rpgfan.com.
Patrick, where can we find you online?
I'm on both Twitter and Blue Sky as Gameadactyl. That's the word game, the letter O, and dactyl, like a pterodactyl. So good luck with that. I like to interact with people, so hit me up. I love chatting.
Cool. And Matt?
If you want to learn more about the truth, you should follow Jesse the Mind Ventura online. But if you like science fiction, please check out my short story collections on mattwardellwrites.wordpress.com. I'm on Instagram, but not really anything else. But yeah, I hope you enjoy those.
Cool. And for me, you can send me off an email at jlogan@rpgfan.com. And I am also on Blue Sky at jonologan.bsky.social. Everyone on here, I want to thank you for joining me for this episode. And also, thank you for playing through and reviewing all of these games. We kind of did this sort of thing last year for Fallout. Actually, it was pretty much the exact same thing where we reviewed 1, 2, and 3 and did a podcast on them. And I really had a good time with this, and I'm really having a good time with this one too. So thank you very much for being here, and thank you very much for reviewing all of these games.
Happy to, anytime.
Yeah, it's made a fan out of me, so I'm looking forward to playing future games in it, or the past games, really.
Cool. Yeah, the timeline's a little bit messed up. And if anyone out there is thinking about playing this series, you can really play it in almost whatever order you want, providing that you start with either Deus Ex or you start with Human Revolution. Anything other than those 2 games, the timeline's going to get a little bit weird. But they're readily available pretty much anywhere. And yeah, I highly recommend you do, because this is the 25th anniversary, and that is a good time to check things out. So thank you everyone on here, and to everyone out there, good night and good luck.